Names mean something. They ain't just words. They're wishes whispered through time, stitched in the lining of who we think our children will become. And when somebody goes and changes a name, without saying a word, that ain't just a mistake. That's war. I remember the moment real clear, like it got sewed into the back of my eyelids. Early Sunday morning, sky barely stretching open, breeze tiptoeing through the kitchen cotton curtains, coffee brewing, pound cake cooling. I had on my robe and picked lavender from the garden, like I always do. And then his car. Marcus, back early from Charlotte, said his job's pitch dinner would run late. But there he was, coming up the walkway with a half-limp bouquet of $6 supermarket roses and a teddy bear under his arm. Big ol' knot in that man's throat, and he ain't even know it yet. I didn't expect him till Monday. I stood by the screen door, squinting like he was a ghost from a different time. "Mama, I'm home." His voice still had that grown boy sweetness, the kind you only hear when he's trying to make up for something. Aunt Shine calls it that sorry man's pitch tone. He pushed the door open with his hip and kissed my cheek rough. He smelled like bourbon cologne. His mind was moving, anxious-like, but his hands were gentle when he set the bear down. "Where's she at?" "Still sleeping," I said. "Probably put the baby back down not an hour ago." "Good," he whispered. "Maybe I can surprise her. Say sorry, set things straight." I just nodded, but my stomach tightened like sour milk in a sunny fridge. He walked past me and toward the nursery, his leather shoes soft on the hallway carpet. I turned back to the pound cake and cut a sliver even though I wasn't hungry. Had to do something with my hands. Then I heard it. Silence. No sweet, "Oh, hey, baby." No little chuckle when she rolled over. Just silence. And that kind of silence come from a place you can't dig through. After what felt like a minute too long, I went to look. He was standing in the nursery, frozen. Not moving, not blinking. The baby's sleeping in the crib, swaddled tight in a yellow blanket. But Marcus ain't looking at the baby. He's staring at the wall. It was the decals. Big bold ones, blue and gold. They used to say, "Welcome home, Micah." Now, Malik. Sharp, new letters. Freshly stuck. Still had the clear plastic corners. Marcus just stared. I stepped into the room slow. "Marcus." "She changed it," he rasped. Like his lips didn't know how to say other words. He walked over to the dresser, pulled out the onesie drawer, all folded neat. And there it was, 5 fresh baby onesies, all embroidered Malik J. Harmon. I felt my breath stick to my ribs halfway up my throat. He held one up like it was paper on fire. "Mama." "Yes, baby?" "Am I wrong? Didn't I say Micah?" We agreed. She nodded. "We stood in that hospital and picked it. Mice, You did?" I felt the air thicken, like the Lord himself sucked all the truth out and left just wet secrets. Then Tasia appeared at the door, serene, braids tied up, one hand on her hip, the other holding her tea mug like royalty at a funeral. "Good morning," she said, calm as ever. Marcus turned. "Why does the wall say Malik?" Tasia took a small sip. "Because that's his name." "No, it's not. That's not his name. We said his name was Micah." "You said Micah. I carried that baby for 9 months. And then you waited for me to be out of town to rename him?" She sipped slower this time. "You missed his birth, Marcus. You left." And there it was, the slap that don't come from a hand. She sat in the rocking chair, smooth and cold as marble. I wanted to speak, but it wasn't my fight. And sometimes you can't save a barrel from falling once it's already rolled off the dock. Marcus was trembling, trying not to. He looked between her and the onesie. "I named him after my brother. You know that. You know what Micah meant to me." Tasia blinked long, like she was living a life 15 miles from this one. Micah was a name I couldn't say at night without crying. "I lost myself trying to love you through that grief, Marcus. And I buried a son before this one. Alone. I named this one." Marcus's hand clenched by his side. The room was tight with quiet again. And the baby, little Malik Micah, he made this soft, almost whimpering sound from the crib, like he felt tension in the womb and brought it with him. That's when Tasia said it, real soft, but mean in its coolness. "Go ahead, Marcus. Say Micah one more time and see if it makes him yours." He stepped back like he'd been shot, put the onesie down real careful, then turned to me. Eyes looking for anchor, a net, some piece of tradition to hold on to. But all I could say was, "Do you want me to warm up your coffee, baby?" Because I knew then this wasn't about coffee. or names, or even babies. This was about control. About the little war a woman fights with hope on one hand and history in the other. Marcus didn't answer. He walked out the front door. Quiet. Didn't even close it hard. Just closed. Tasia picked up the bear he brought in earlier and placed it on the guest bed, then walked back to rock the baby. Like nothing happened at all. Some women don't raise their voices, they raise the cost. Some men don't see it coming, 'cause they too busy running from guilt. And some babies, they born into the middle of that tidal wave. Don't know who to become, 'cause their name was made a battlefield before they even grew teeth. Aunt Shine came by later that day. She looked at the nursery wall, sucked her teeth. She changed that baby's name behind his back? Lord have mercy, she gon' set this family on fire, I told her softly. Fire been burning, we just now smellin' the smoke. To understand why someone would rename a child in silence, you gotta understand the silence they was surviving in. You know how thunder don't just show up? It starts with a hush too deep for your ears to hear. The clouds hush, the trees hush, then the crack-lettin' starts. Tasia and Marcus, they've been hushin' so long, that storm should have come sooner. See, people always think a heartbreak begins when someone cheats, or fights, or leaves. But it don't always happen in the breaking. Sometimes it happens in the absence. Like when a man don't show up to the ultrasound, don't call when her back hurt, don't ask how her sleep's been. Not 'cause he don't love her, but 'cause he caught up mournin' a ghost. And that's where this all began. They'd been married barely 3 years when she lost the first one. A boy, stillborn at 34 weeks. Devlin. Nobody talks about babies born too early. They talk around it, over it, with God's got a plan on their tongues and casseroles in their hands. But Tasia grieved in textile. She folded clothes that never got worn. She washed bottles no baby drank from. And Marcus? He stayed busy. He ran. I'm just trying to provide, he'd say, with his suit slacks on and his tie too tight. She needs space. Doctors say it's normal. But grief don't ask for space. It creates it, quietly. A chasm, a canyon between lovers that don't echo right anymore. I remember one night, I walked in with my apron still wet from dishwater, just in time to see her put the baby's memory box on the closet shelf. No tears, just folded pain. I said, Tasia, you want company? She just said, no need no company, when nobody was really beside me to begin with. I didn't ask what she meant, but I knew it. And I knew he would pay for it, not with money, but with something heavier. Then came the second pregnancy. It wasn't announced with joy this time. There was no Facebook post, no ultrasound held up for all the cousins. Just quiet, a tighter curl of her braids, a lower sleep in his eyes. And it was during this pregnancy that Marcus decided to sign a temporary contract in Charlotte, a 6-month account that had him gone most weeks, home on Sundays, always promising he was building a better future. Micah, he told Ora Mae one afternoon, holding a whiskey tight. If it's a boy, I want to name him Micah, after my brother. You know, start again. Micah, that name brought back a weight I hadn't worn in years. My youngest child, gone from heroin. Long before the church caught on that your kids could be those kids too. I looked at Marcus and nodded, 'cause part of me thought, maybe a name could make a life whole again. But Tasia? She didn't answer right away. She just said maybe. That was the first crack. She wouldn't say it out loud, but every time Marcus brought up Micah, she tensed. Her hand would rest low on her belly like she was protecting it from him, not for him. And me? I just kept stirring the pot, watching, worried. I caught her one day on the porch. She was crooning to her stomach, soft humming, but her lips were saying something too. I leaned close to catch it. Only 3 syllables before she hushed when she saw me. Malik? I never said a word, but my heart unbuttoned right then, like I felt a storm coming, and nobody had shut the windows. Marcus came home early that day, walked over to her with 2 hands full of half-rotten tulips and said, book the tickets, baby moon, just us. Tasia didn't even look up from her Kindle. I'm at 38 weeks, Marcus. What I look like on a plane? He kissed her forehead anyway, but she flinched. I wanted to scream talk to each other, but pride kept their tongues tied, and trauma kept stitching new seams between them. Then came labor. It started sudden. Tasia was staying here that week, while Marcus was out opening a new office. I held her hand through it. I cut the cord myself. Marcus missed the birth entirely. 3 days. 3 missed calls. By the time he came back, baby already had a name. Micah? He asked, breathing heavy, flowers in hand. Tacia just looked away. What's the birth certificate say? She didn't answer. He lifted the paper. Eyes went wide. Malik Jordan Harmon. And she said, "It's done. I wish I could tell you the name change was the worst of it, but it was how quiet she was, how calm her pain had become. No yelling, no guilt, just silence and ink. That's what tore Marcus up the most." Back at home, Joylene tried to keep the peace. She helped fold diapers, bought extra baby wipes, but the tension sucked all the oxygen out the hallway. Even little Ania sensed it. She turned to me one day and asked, "Grandma May, why don't Uncle Marcus call the baby by his name?" My heart split like a peach pit pulled too soon. "Maybe he ain't learned it yet, baby." But inside I knew he was refusing, still hoping it might get changed back, still hoping he could rewind time and be there. And just when it seemed he was making peace with it, almost laughing again, fixing the kitchen sink without being asked, I found the envelope. Stuffed halfway under his suitcase. It was folded, creased like guilt. Inside was a photo of the baby, and the name Malik scribbled out in anger. And Mike half written beside it, then erased. Like he quit halfway through forgiveness. When a man can't say his child's name, he starts to say other things he can't take back. And that's what brings us to why the name broke him. Because to him it wasn't just disrespect. It was erasure. The little boy he'd dreamed of was gone. And in that space was a new name he'd had no say in, no fatherhood in. That's what betrayal looks like in families like ours. Not fists, not cheating, just absence, and then acting like you were never missed. That night, we sat up late, me and Joylene. She drinking cheap sweet wine, me picking at leftover greens. She said, voice slurred, "You want to ask it to my face, Joy?" Joylene swallowed hard. "Did you change that baby's name because you didn't know who the father was?" "No," Tacia said. "I changed it because Marcus didn't show up to be one." I could feel the air twist in my lungs. She looked straight at me then. He was gone when I went into labor, gone for the doctor's appointments, gone after Devlin. Said Micah was about healing, but who's healing, Miss Ora? My heart ached in places I ain't touched since burying my youngest. "You could have told him," I said softly. She nodded, but I didn't want him to take over the name like he took over the grief. I named Malik for me. For the child I lost, for the woman I became watching my husband disappear. Joylene's breath caught in her throat like a cough that couldn't come up. Then came the drawer, 'cause ain't no Southern family scene complete without something dramatic from a drawer. Joylene slammed it open, right there in the dining room hutch, and held up what looked like a manila envelope. The air changed. "Then what's this?" she snapped. "You leave this here on purpose? Some truth get left out for us to collect too?" She ripped the envelope open. Birth certificate copy, handwritten edits, and the first scribbled out name, Micah Jerome Harmon, crossed. Thick black pen, replaced neatly. Malik Jordan Harmon. I stood too fast. Something inside me snapped. That's not how this was supposed to be done. If you was going to rename a child, you best not do it in ink. You best bring a witness. Generations don't survive rewritten stories without pain longer than memory itself. That boy will grow up knowing his name changed by conflict, Aunt Shine hissed. Not love, conflict. You trying to tell me that's peace? Tacia stood now, just as tall, didn't back down. Peace didn't attend my trauma. So why you think I owe it attendance now? Her voice cracked for the first time, only once. Then from the back door, the slow creak. Marcus. He must have come home somewhere around the thunder, saw Caleb on the porch shaking. He held a grocery sack, ice melted down the sides. His tie was undone, and he saw everything. The envelope, the birth certificate laid bare. Tacia's face flushed with heat. Joylene clamped her mouth shut. He leaned on the doorframe, didn't move for a full minute. I whispered, "Marcus," but he lifted his hand. "Don't. I don't need nobody telling me what's in that envelope," he finally said, voice like a gravel road in stormy night. "'Cause I already knew." He walked in and pulled out another item from the paper bag, a little wooden plaque, painted fresh, still wet on the corners. Malik Micah Harmon. If she gets to name him for her grief, then I get to add mine. Tacia stared at it for a long second, then tears. At last, her whole chest sank. No words though, just tears. Grief ran down her face like ink off letters written in the rain. And me? I walked behind Marcus, placed my hand on his shoulder. You don't raise a grown man. But you can stand beside him, like a prayer with skin. Sometimes a name gotta hold two truths, the part we cried through, and the part we're still learning to forgive. Ora Mae, some truths don't bring no peace, they just take the war off the table. And child, that day, war was done being subtle. The sun never rose that morning. Not fully. Sky stayed gray, like grief had climbed down and laid across the clouds. You could tell the Lord was listening, watching, maybe bracing himself too. The house felt tired. All the fight from the night before had settled like dust in corners we ain't swept in years. Nobody made eggs, nobody turned on the gospel station. Even Aunt Shine stayed silent over a cold mug of chicory coffee. Then Marcus walked in. This was the day of the baby's blessing service. The family had already gathered out front with cheesy gift bags, little shoes wrapped in tissue paper, and a homemade cake from Miss Delilah up the street. But inside, we was still buried in what hadn't been said. Marcus stood in the hallway, straightening his jacket. His eyes were shadowed like he ain't slept a second. He kept turning over that plaque in his hand, the one he painted. Malik Micah Harmon. 2 names, 1 truth. I wanted to speak, say something, but it wasn't mine to fix anymore. He took a deep breath and stepped outside, faced the yard full of folding chairs and nosy folks. And then she came down the hallway. Tasia, quiet steps, baby against her shoulder, wrapped in a cream-knit blanket. That baby melted against her like warm bread. And for a second, you could almost believe they were a family. The church deacon started speaking by the flower trellis. You could hear his voice crack like old Bible leather. We gather to bless this child, to speak life into his name. He looked at Marcus, looked at Tasia, and then confusion. His eyes darted to the baby baptismal certificate Tasia had sent ahead. A long pause. This child, Malik Jordan Harmon. Marcus stepped in. It's Malik Micah Harmon now. People gave sideways glances. Some hands clutched purses slow. Tasia froze, then turned 1 step back. You went and changed it, after everything? He nodded, slow, measured. You changed it without me. I'm adding what you took away. I didn't take, I named what you weren't there for. And you think I ain't suffering? You act like my grief don't count unless I cry in front of folks. His voice cracked. Everybody got real still. That yard was a courtroom God didn't call. You weren't the only one that lost somebody, Tasia, he said, lips trembling. I lost my brother to the street. I named our son to honor him, because I needed to see something of him live on. Tears welled up again. You robbed me of that. While I was gone, making rent, making sure we ain't drown, you took the only name I had left to keep him alive. Tasia stepped forward, baby still small against her chest. Her voice was low, but every eye was on her. You want me to feel sorry you weren't there? You left me, Marcus. Just like you left when Devlin died. You was building dreams for yourself. I was burying pieces of me and carrying a new one. And I named him Malik so I could feel mine again. She bit her lip, eyes glossy, softening. If it was a girl, maybe I would have named her Micah. But I looked at this boy, and I needed someone who didn't start out already claimed by your grief. He ain't claimed by grief, Tasia. Yes, he is, you just don't see it yet. The deacon lowered his Bible. Aunt Shine whispered, Lord have mercy, under her breath twice. I stepped forward. I had to. I had to hold this collapse with words before it burned into that boy's name forever. I ain't gonna take a side today, I said. Not because I'm scared, but because I've been both of y'all. People looked my way. I took a breath that felt 2 decades deep. I been the woman that raised a child by herself 'cause heartbreak put a man's feet on the road and kept him there. And I been the mama who watched her son wrestle with a ghost he couldn't bury. And I been the fool who thought names could protect children from the same sorrow. But I'ma tell you this, your child gon' wear that name you gave him, all of it. He gon' carry both your stories, and if you don't make peace with each other, he gon' get the war instead. You could hear a fork hit the sweet tea glass behind me. Then I turned to Marcus gently. Baby, a name ain't just yours to grieve with. And Tasia, it ain't just yours to reclaim hurt over. They both stood there, he with his hands ballin' tight, she with the baby slowly waking up against her shoulder, little hand pawing the air between them. You want to bless that child, I said? Then bless him with something better than a hyphenated wound. Make it more than Malik, more than Micah. Make it the bridge. The pastor started again, but this time he asked the parents, What is the name of your child? A pause, a long one. Then Tasia stepped forward. So did Marcus. They shared a glance that no sermon could translate. And they said together, Malik Micah Harmon. Silence. Tasha looked down at the child as if seeing him all over again, like she finally saw what love built despite the cracks. Marcus reached for the blanket, took their son in his arms. People clapped soft, unsure, but I knew what it meant. Something broke open. Maybe it was forgiveness. Maybe just air after holding breath for too long. But it was something new starting that didn't need to make sense to anyone else. That night, I caught Marcus outside smoking. He flicked ash with a quiet shame in his ribs. Ma, he said, was I wrong? I sat down beside him, handed him the tin of buttons I'd kept from all their baby clothes growing up. He thumbed a pale blue one from his christening gown. No, I whispered. You just late to the hurt. And sometimes, baby, that's all it takes for someone to rewrite the truth without asking. And I'll tell you this, that child gon' grow up with both names. Malik, the strength his mama found after silence. Micah, the memory his daddy couldn't put down. And through both of them, maybe he'll find who he really is. Generations survive when pride takes a back seat to purpose. And maybe a name ain't enough to fix a family. But it's a start, a seed. Names stay with us longer than people do. Some folk leave, some die, some break your heart. But a name, that's what echo gets called when love tries again. It was a Tuesday night when the dust finally settled. Not all the way, but enough so you could breathe again without feeling like the past was sitting heavy on your chest. The christening was over. The cake half-eaten in the kitchen. The folding chairs stacked near the rose bushes. Marcus had gone quiet again, but this time it wasn't rage. Just the kind of quiet a man carries when he realizes his pain ain't special. It's just heavy, like everybody else's. I was sitting on the porch swing that evening. Same as always. Wind smelt of honeysuckle and old promises. Anya was in the front yard drawing chalk hearts on the sidewalk. Said she was making a welcome home sign for Malik, even though he never really left. Funny how children understand deeper than language will allow. Behind me in the house, Joylene swept up while gospel music played low from my record player. Caleb hadn't come back yet. And Aunt Shine, well, she'd fallen asleep with her church fan still in her hand. Typical. Tasha came outside. Didn't say nothing at first. Just sat down beside me with 2 cups of tea, one for me, one for her. She didn't drink hers, just held it close like a shield. We sat in the kind of silence that meant everything wasn't okay, but might be if we let time do what words failed to fix. Then she said, real soft, I think he forgives me. Even if he don't say it, I think he do. I didn't say yes or no, just looked straight ahead and took a slow sip of my tea. What matters now, I said, is if Malik forgives the both of y'all. Not now, but one day when he finds out 2 people warred over his name instead of winning peace in his presence. Tasha's jaw tightened. She wiped the corner of her eye but didn't let that tear fall. You think he'll hate me? I turned to her, rubbed my thumb across the back of her knuckles. I think children don't need perfect mamas. They just need ones that show up with their whole truth. Eventually. The wind picked up and scattered a few chalk hearts on the sidewalk. Ania called out, Granny Mae, look, I made one for Uncle Marcus too. I waved, and inside me, I prayed she never had to question her name, her worth, her truth. Marcus came out later that night when the sun was falling behind the trees. He didn't say a word, just sat on the porch step. The kind of closeness that said sorry, even if the word never left his mouth. Tasha passed him the baby, and he held him like breath in a storm. And finally, soft and slow, he said, Hey there, Micah, like he was trying to get used to both pieces of truth at once. The baby cooed. And that was the sound of peace. Sometimes healing don't shout. Sometimes it don't even speak English. Sometimes it just breathes. And that's how we got here. Not through sermons, not through screaming, but through silence that learned to say something soft before it was too late. Now I don't know what will happen next. Maybe Marcus and Tasha find their way back. Maybe not. But what I do know, that child's name will hold every mile they walked alone, every scar they stitched quiet, every fight they never wanted, and every choice they finally made for him. They say blood is thicker than water, but forgiveness is thicker than both. Lord have mercy, baby, if you made it this far. Thank you for sitting with me. Names don't always tell the whole story, but stories, they'll heal what names cannot. Now tell me, sweet pea, what name in your life means more than words? Drop it down below. Who named you into who you are? Until next time, keep listening for the truth behind things people don't say, and keep coming back to the porch. Here on Tales of Ora Mae,